Welcome back to part 2 of my top 10 of 2025. Let's just dive right in with number 5, which is The Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. This is my first read through of Harry Potter, and I absolutely loved it. I'm actually really sad it's over, but I'm glad I read it. This is definitely my favorite of the series, and it's where the storyline gets a little bit darker. And that's something I loved about this whole series, is that if you read this growing up, like my wife did, the books grew up with you, which is such a cool concept. I'm kind of sad I didn't get to experience that, but I'm glad I did now. And in this story, we see where Hogwarts goes from haven to ominous and unsafe. And if I hadn't already seen the movies, this book would have absolutely wrecked me. At number 4, we have James Islington's Strength of the Few. This is the sequel to The Will of the Many, and what I love about this book is just how ambitious it was. There's 3 very different plot lines in this book, and what I love about them is that they're so distinct it feels like you're reading 3 different books, all of which I enjoyed. It answered all the questions from The Will of the Many, and it posed new and even bigger questions, and it didn't feel like a bridge book between novels. This one felt like it stood on its own, and it did everything I wanted from a sequel, and it did it well. At number 3, we have Yumi the Nightmare Painter. This is another cozy fantasy read this year. This is also Brandon Sanderson's first foray into romance. It's not a spicy romance. It's a romance that's built on mental and spiritual connection rather than physical attraction, and that adds to the cozy, warm vibe that this book has. The way the 2 main characters' lives and personalities are so incredibly different, yet they both look to support and help the other rather than either of them trying to fix the other, just leans into and supports that cozy feel-good vibe. And while it is a part of the Cosmere, it is a standalone, and it's one that's definitely worth reading. Number 2 is The Eye of the Bedlam Bride by Matt Denneman. This is the 6th out of the 7 books that are currently out in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and it is the emotional peak. This took the DCC world to a darker, more emotional place that added a lot of depth to the characters and the world itself. Now, don't get me wrong, this book was also a lot of fun with its Yu-Gi-Oh! Inspired card collection, and it also has probably the funniest moment in the entire series. It was so fun that I have a lot of friends who are just reading it, who specifically asked me to hear the audio for this part because they just had to know what it sounded like. And finally, that brings us to number 1, which is The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. This series is the Seinfeld of the grimdark fantasy world, and I'm totally okay with that. The plot is definitely the passenger princess to the character-first narrative that we find in this series, and boy oh boy are there some memorable characters. Joe Abercrombie gives you more distinct and unique characters in the first 3 pages of meeting them than some authors give you in the entire book. And I've also heard this series be referred to as the grimdark version of Lord of the Rings, which I kind of get, because there's this legendary quest for this legendary item, and there's a little fellowship that goes on this quest, except in this version of the story, the Fellowship is comprised of characters that are more like Gollum than they are like Frodo. If you like characters and you don't mind stories that don't have morally uplifting plots or characters, this is an absolute must-read. That's it. That's the top 10. If you want to hear any more of my thoughts on any of these books, check out the linked video. Thanks so much.